couple of weeks ago, the AJC released a scathing investigative report on the University of Georgia. It included the following headline: Georgia football program, rallies when players are accused of abusing women. I took a strong stance on the show the following night. Some of you were taken aback because you're used to this time of year just being a little more easygoing, a little looser in the format, and it was not easygoing, nor was it a loose format that night. I took great exception, as did a lot of folks from Georgia, to the way that article was presented. I had some things thrown at me. I'll address that later, but I want to get right to the nuts and bolts of this. What happened was exactly what I expected to happen. I knew Georgia wasn't going to sit around and just take that. So Georgia, in case you haven't been paying attention, and there is a lot going on, Georgia issues a 9-page demand for a retraction. And I think some of you may have read that. I read it for you if you didn't have time to read it. I'm not going to summarize it. It is a lot of what you would expect. It was Georgia essentially calling out the AJC. Alan Judd's the investigative reporter over there. I don't know Alan. I've never met Alan. I got nothing against Alan. I just happen to believe the standard that entity claims to hold itself to was not met in that report. That's the long and short of it. And so Georgia obviously felt the same way. So they issue a demand for a retraction, but that would have taken 1 page. It was 9 pages because Georgia essentially did the investigation for the AJC. Now, you may listen to that and you may look at me very skeptically and say, oh, what, Georgia investigated themselves? No, that's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is there were more details. Or let me put it to you like this. The Georgia retraction demand letter was more thoroughly vetted and better presented and more detailed than the actual investigative report was. That's what blew me away, because I got to my phone like 2 hours after it had been released. So a lot of people had already had their takes on it. You know, a lot of people had already spoken their mind on Twitter, like whatever. Well, I decided to go read it for myself. Bold, I know, but I decided to go read it for myself. And like 3 or 4 pages in, I already realized, having read the AJC report and now having read what I had in front of me, this right here's what the AJC piece would have looked like or should have looked like. But here's the problem, if you want to call it one. Had the AJC's initial investigative report included all the details in the demand for retraction letter, there would have been no investigative report because it wouldn't have had legs to stand on. That was the entire premise. And you notice, if you guys watched or listened to that show a couple of weeks ago, you'll remember I didn't go down a laundry list. I chose one specific story that was included in that report to hone in on, because I think if you're presenting an overarching argument, and if you're saying that there have been 11 players accused of this, 11 players accused of that, well, if you only give me specific details on 2, and one of them's already off the team, the other one's on the team, I zero in on the one that's on the team because you are claiming again that the football program, quote, rallies when players are accused of abusing women. If that's serious, I want to know about it. I'm not carrying water for anyone, as some of you said in the comments section. I want to know about it, because if that's true, that's about to lead this show. I don't care who it is. It's about to lead the show. So I dug into it. I did my own calls and I read the story. So I tried to gather as much information as I could. The problem was it evaporated. The more you dug into it, it evaporated. So if you're a Florida fan, if you're an FSU fan, if you're an Alabama fan, and you looked at this and you enjoyed it from the standpoint that Georgia's being drugged through the mud, the AJC's doing to Georgia what we haven't been able to do to them on the field, in other words, the past couple of years. Just pretend this was your university for a second. So remove the block G and put that U from Miami there, or put a South Carolina Gamecock logo there. And I want you to imagine that one of your recruits comes on your campus. He's 16. He goes out and drinks, does some things he shouldn't, but then again, calibrating also some things that many, many, many other kids do on many, many, many other campuses every single day. And that includes official recruiting visits. So far, there's nothing that would warrant an investigative piece done on him. But then also imagine that you find out that there was a sexual encounter that started as consensual, and then there are allegations that it became something other than that. That is serious. On the surface, that's serious. But then imagine that the rest of the story suggests that Georgia sent a guy who's a fixer over to the police station, and the police essentially walk in red and black sunglasses, and they lean towards the side of the accused, and they sort of work in his favor, and this is what you're led to believe because you read the report. And then imagine that's kind of where it's left. Okay, and the lasting impression you're supposed to get is this dude was accused of sexual assault, and then Georgia sent some guy over there who you've never heard of to fix it and clean it up, and as a result, now he's on the team. Okay, that was what the report said. I read it like everyone else did. Then imagine the full police report is released, including text exchanges, including a mountain of counter evidence to that initial allegation that just makes the allegation itself go up in smoke. And imagine how aggravated you'd be. That's how I read it. When we got all the information, that's how I read it. So anyway, here's what happened. What happened was people looked at that and they said, all right, well, that's one. Okay, so maybe you disproved one. Maybe it's not that big a deal. There's still 10 more. That's not the way this works. It's not the way any of this works. If you're claiming that there are 11 instances of football players on a team being accused of sexual assault but still being on the team, and you're claiming the football team rallies around those at the expense of the accuser, but you only give me specifics on 2, and one of them's been kicked off the team the moment that those allegations were levied against him and is eventually going to go to court, and the other one's over here, and that's the only other one you've given me anything on, and I do cursory amounts of digging, and your story falls apart, what am I supposed to think about the rest? Because I'm certainly not about to think, oh, I'll blindly trust this entity on the other 10 they gave me no details on. So that was my take on it. And then, like I said, some people came at me that were just clearly aggravated that Georgia was not about to be dragged through the mud nearly as much as it appeared. And they said, well, you're just carrying water for Georgia. No. Here's the thing about it. Forget about the jersey for a second. I want you to understand something. There's always this balance. There's this fine line you have to walk where if you've got really, really serious allegations, you can't be flippant about it. So sexual assault obviously fits that description. But then when you find out that maybe the allegation is unsubstantiated, that's one thing. But then if you've got a major media outlet, the biggest one in the state of Georgia, trafficking in that, and it kind of seems more and more like they weaponized what they knew your emotion would be towards the headline to further some cause or some crusade they're on. I don't care which team it is. Could be Arizona State, could be University of Montana. That's something that I'm going to address on this show because here's what else I know. Whether it is Arizona State or Montana or the University of Georgia, they can't say everything they want to. That's why that extraordinary measure Georgia went to is so eyebrow-raising. Because I want you to think about also the fact that we've got SEC Media Days literally next week, downtown Nashville. That is the least ideal timing imaginable to have something like this happen. So the folks at Georgia were so taken aback and they were so against a wall irate at how the AJC presented them, they said, don't even care if Media Days is next week. We're about to publicize this. We're about to put 9 pages in their face, call for a retraction, and then we're going to take Kirby Smart, and we're going to take our legal representation here, and we're going to issue statements, and he'll be asked about it all day, every room he goes into, including the one with us, next week. And they looked at all that and said, it's worth it. You honestly think that would happen? If they were, as the AJC says, rallying around players accused of abusing women? Because here's the other thing. The other thing is they didn't run from the other allegations because they're not allegations. Like the street racing stuff over there is really serious. And Kirby Smart spoke about it. They didn't run away from that. They didn't deny it at all. In fact, they spoke about it. He spoke as straightforward as he has about it, saying, I'm doing the best I can. We're doing the best we can. We don't know exactly what the answer is. It's not for a lack of trying. I've talked to some folks over there, and they bring every kind of speaker, every kind of insurance adjuster in there, every kind of scare you straight tactic, every kind of run someone till 2 inches from death tactic you can employ. They've done it. It's just not a switch you flip. And you also are outside and maybe have the benefit of saying, oh, just kick everyone off the team. It's not that simple. It's not that simple because it's always case by case. And it also leads me back to thinking about what I would do if I were a head coach. Like, how many folks do you know that get dismissed from a major college football program over speeding tickets? Not the kind of stuff that happened in January. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a different galaxy. But I'm talking about the spotlight that's on that university now because of what happened in January. And so if I'm a Georgia football player and I'm clocked doing 84 and a 65, I'm going to get popped. In the state of Georgia especially, I'm going to get popped. That's going to be front page news. Is the answer really to kick me off the team? Or is the answer to try and employ other tactics as best I can if I'm Kirby Smart and try and address the problem? The point is they didn't run from any of that. There is a big gulf between that stuff and what the AJC chose to accuse them of. And frankly, if you're not guilty of it, come out swinging. That's exactly what they did. So I don't think you've seen nearly the end of that. And I think it'll be a central focus, as off-the-field matters usually are, at Media Days next week. And so everyone else will talk about it, so maybe we won't have to talk about it.